Touchdown Tampa Bay. You're listening to the Pewtercast.
Welcome to the Pewtercast. This is the 2019 season. Ren, I know the 2019 season officially started back in March, and then it started back with OTAs when football was back, and then training camp when football was back again, and then the preseason game one when football was back again. But Ren, this is it, buddy. The 2019 season, first week of practice with the 53-man roster as we're heading into the actual first official game of the season. It is finally here, and it is upon us. I'm Brent Allen, your host, and I'm joined by none other than my good friend, the man himself, Ren Daxt. Ren, how you doing today, buddy?
We're back.
We are. Again.
We're back. We're
again.
back again. Officially official. This is officially official this time.
Right. Are we Facebook official?
We're Facebook. Yes, there you go. Confirmed. Yeah, man, it's here we go. First time we're recording 4 shows in a week.
Yeah.
Well, no, 3. We didn't do an Instacast. Did we do an Instacast?
It'll count from last week.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we're right on the cusp. We're on the precipice.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, San Francisco rolls into town, and like you said, the 53-man roster is set. A couple things have changed and moved around, and VA's given press conferences, and the stories are starting to fly out of the locker room. So it counts. Yeah,
but we're not talking about any of that stuff that you just mentioned. That'll come out on our Buck in the News show later in the week. On today's show, Ren, you've actually set up a really cool guest for us that at least residents in the Tampa Bay area are probably going to be very familiar with. Tell us about this guy that we're going to be talking to today.
Yeah, it's JP Peterson from FanStream Sports. Formerly, most people might know him from 620, the sports station here in town. The official station for like the Rays, the Bucs, the official station for everybody, because they're the only one. I was talking to him for a while, and we just sort of couldn't connect. And I saw him at training camp and asked if he wanted to come on the show. And he started sort of this new project I talked about, FanStream Sports. And so he was happy to come on. And he's just one of those guys that he's into it. Like, he's in it like we are. He's not one of those people that covers the Bucs, but doesn't really know what he's talking about. Doesn't really, right. I cover the Bucs, but I really don't pay that much attention. Like, he knows who the backup guard is.
Right.
Right. You know what I'm saying? Like he's in it, he loves it, he's breathing it, and he's been doing it forever. So you'll hear a little bit of that bio at the front, and it was a good conversation.
It kind of sounds a lot like, he's a guy who's been in it before professionally, got fired very publicly, it seems like. And like, he's like one of us. You mentioned we've already recorded it. We have. So, Ren, let's waste no more time in getting right into our interview with JP Peterson. That's what we're going to be doing on today's episode of the Pewtercast. Friends, let me ask you a question. When was the last time you took that special someone out on a date? How expensive was it? The average date night these days costs around $115, and that doesn't even include babysitters for the kids if you need them. Now look, I don't care who you are, that's just plain expensive, especially if you're on a budget. Well, what if I told you that you could have an incredibly fun and unique date night for the next 6 weeks, or even 6 months, for around $30 a night? Well, you can with Hunt a Killer. Hunt a Killer is the murder mystery box that immerses you in an ongoing experience in the comfort of your own home. With every box or episode, you'll dive deeper into the case, sift through the evidence and the case files, and you'll be running red string from pin to pin on a map until you crack the case and catch the killer. Now, if you've been listening to the show, you know that I've been trying out Hunt a Killer this summer, and I have just caught my first killer. Well, not just me, my wife and me. And I gotta tell you guys, we loved this game. It was so much fun. Not only are we going to be diving into the new series coming out really soon, but this time we're going to be doing it with friends. So I guess that means double dates for me for a while. Listen, guys, this is a great, cost-effective way to spend time with friends and with loved ones working together and having a good time. Now, if that sounds like fun to you, I've got a special offer from Hunt a Killer. Just go to huntakiller.com and use the code PewterCast for 20% off your first box. Again, make sure to use the code PewterCast, that's all one word, for a 20% discount and to show your support for the PewterCast. See if you have what it takes to hunt a killer. For people out there who don't know, actually like myself, because I'm not from the Tampa market, tell us kind of where you came from and you know, how you got into this business, and then all the way up to what you're doing now with FanStream Sports and how that whole thing kind of came to be.
Oh, wow. That's going to take a long time. I got into sportscasting when I was at Florida State. I interned for the local ABC station there on television. And pardon me if you hear a little heavy breathing in the background. My dog, Tally the Wonder Dog, has been home all day, and she's like, now she wants to play. So you get to hear some of that in the background. I started as an intern at a local TV station there and got to cover my beloved Florida State Seminoles and Bobby Bowden during the heyday. So it was a great start to my career. And I came up in television news back when that was actually a thing, when people watched the 6 and 11 o'clock news. Worked my way up from Tallahassee, spent a couple of years in Greensboro, then came to Tampa in 97. Coincidentally, when the Bucs started winning again. So it was all about me, in case you didn't know.
Oh, okay.
And then, got the pleasure of working with Tony Dungy and then Coach Gruden and that whole thing. And I worked at Channel 8 for many years, doing the 6 and 11 o'clock news there. Worked with Chris Thomas, the great Chris Thomas. He was kind of my mentor. And I took over when he got too critical of the Buccaneers, and they didn't want to do that anymore. So they let him go. And then I got downsized, or they didn't like me talking critically about the Rays. So moved on, went a couple of years in Atlanta, worked for the Falcons network, did their morning show and their radio network, anchored their radio network, pregame and postgame shows. Came back to Tampa, started working at 620, working with Ron Diaz. Glad that was ended. What a tool to work with. And then he eventually got me fired at 620 after I got the afternoon gig there and was number one in the ratings on that station. I had the best ratings on the station, top 5 men 25 to 54, and got fired. So after I got fired from 620, I said, everybody wanted me to do a podcast and whatnot. And I said, why don't we stream a live show and podcast it as well, so people can have an alternative, a sports talk alternative to 620, because from what I see on Twitter and social media, people want something different. So that's what we're doing. We have the app. It's called FanStream Sports. You download the app, then you tap that app, and we're on live 3 to 6, and you can hear the best of Tampa Bay sports, all the big names. Ronnie Barber comes on with us from time to time. Orestes Estrada, all the Rays TV folks come on. We have a lot of guys that cover the Buccaneers, Greg Allman, Anthony Becht. And we get all the players. I was in the locker room today did a one-on-one with them, MJ Stewart, with Bo Allen, Devin White, OJ Howard. So we get the best players and get them on in long formats, so you guys can hear them for 20, 30 minutes at a time and not, have to break for 7-minute commercial breaks like they do on 620. So that's the long form of it. But since you guys have a podcast, you could do that.
Yeah. Before we get into the Buccaneers, I'm really interested about this 620 stuff because, they have sort of opened the door for podcasts like us. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but there's about, 25, 30 Buccaneer podcasts out there, Brent?
At some point over the course of this past offseason, Gene and I counted up to it was in the 40s.
Okay. So
it's crazy.
Wow.
It's dumb, JP. It's stupid, the amount of and by the way, I've done a little bit of research and looked at other teams, like major teams like the Packers and the Patriots and those guys. And most of those guys have somewhere around 8 to the very low teens that I can find. Yeah. The Buccaneers have it was like 40. Now that's if you count like every single little thing you could possibly count, but legitimately it's very much into the 20s, low 30s.
And I know, from what I can tell in the research I've done, you guys do really well. I mean, And the reason is because people are looking for content. Because this market, the 11th largest market, has the worst sports radio station in history. I mean, it's awful. You can't listen to it. And what's even worse is, I mean, there's some good guys over there. Don't get me wrong. I work with some good ones, but there's some really bad ones over there. And look at their resumes. Mm-hmm. Most of them are from the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Most of them are Northeasterners. Most of them are former producers. Most of them don't have the resumes that you'll see at other stations that have guys that have been in the marketplace for 20 plus years doing the 6 and 11 o'clock news, like myself, or like Rick Stroud and Tom Jones, who have been writers in this market for 20, 25 years. You look at every other market, those are the people who are on sports radio. You look at this market, and it's a bunch of inexperienced people or former FM music guys. They've got one guy on there that's played, and that's Ian Beckles, and I used to work with Ian. And I like Ian. He does a good job. But the show itself with Ron, I can't listen to it. It's a tough listen. So, yeah, it's opened it up for a lot of meaningful people that do their homework and want to talk about the Bucs or want to talk about sports. And I'll tell you this: I know strategically they want to do guy talk. They don't want to do sports talk. They don't think it's got legs in this market, and so they're trying to do compete with the bone and not do sports. And if there was another sports station in town, a bona fide sports station, which I'm trying to build one show at a time, I think they would do very, very well. So they know they don't have any competition, so they can do whatever they want. And it's not what the people want. That's why all these podcasts are popping up, in my opinion. I think you're absolutely right.
Mm-hmm. I also think, and this will be the last one for me, and we'll get on to the Buccaneers, but I also think it's sort of the format that 620 has adopted. And I'm with you. Like there's a lot of guys, I know them, of course. I'm a huge sports fan, but, we've been able to have some press credentials during training camp the past few years, and we've introduced ourselves. And a lot of these guys know me on site, So, we're acquaintances. I'm friendly with them. I'm sort of selfish with my word. I'm friends with people. So they're acquaintances of mine, and I like them. But I think the format that they use, it doesn't engage with people anymore. Mm-hmm. You said you got a 3-hour show. You got 7 minutes, so that's like 40 minutes, an hour. Then you got your Sports Center break, and then you got you got 3 or 4 10-minute, 15-minute segments with your guests. Like, when do you talk to the people? Mm-hmm. Like, there's no
they don't.
room
they don't want to. They don't want to call. They don't want callers. They don't want to interact with the people. They don't. They think that what they're saying is better than anything that they would hear from and frankly, the hosts that they have aren't very good at interacting with them. They just, as soon as they disagree with them or they say something they don't like, I mean, Ron Diaz just hangs up on people because he wants to hear himself talk. I mean, and I worked with him for 2 years. That's all he ever. I'm like, dude, why'd you hang up on him? I mean, he was making a good point. He doesn't want anybody on the air that's actually making sense and entertaining people because it takes away from him. It's brutal, but
it is brutal.
It is what it is.
And thank you for saying what you said about our show. I mean, that's a hallmark of our show is the interaction. We have 2 shows a week that are mostly dedicated to interacting with our fellow fans out there, and that's what the fans want. Yeah, and I think
they're not getting it from 620.
I think that's been a large part of what's caused our show to grow and do its thing. So to everyone listening, thank you. And JP, I mean, it's what you're doing over there, just trying to bring. I mean, that's what we do, right? Like, that's when Ren and I talk about what kind of shows we're going to do. We say, what kind of show do we want to listen to? Let's make that show. And it sounds like that's what you're doing with your new thing, and where you're going is going, what kind of things do we want to actually talk about? Let's do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's room for, if they want to do what they want to do, that's fine. It's their station. And I don't want to sound like bitter guy because I got fired, but I just don't agree with what they're doing. And if they did have if they had a competitive station, they never would have fired me because they know I'd go right over there and take the ratings that I had with them. Mm-hmm. So I think it's sad for the people, really, for real sports fans that want real sports talk. It's sad for them. So, but let's talk about the Bucs instead.
Just what I was going to get to. Speaking of Sports. Let's start off with the biggest, I don't want to say question mark, but the one that gets the most talk among Bucs fans, casual Bucs fans, hardcore Bucs fans. Bruce Arians was brought in here to quote unquote fix Jameis. Now I know you've been a Jameis fan for a long time. So have I. As soon as you left Florida State, no offense. Do you buy into this, like, fixing Jameis? Do you think Jameis needs to be fixed, or do you think it was sort of coaches / defense / offensive line running? He just needed a better team around him. Like, so where do you fall on that scale?
Well, Jameis is far from perfect, but show me young quarterbacks that are great right away and perfect right away. I mean, Deshaun Watson is about as close as you can come, but he's had a better team around him. He's had a playoff team around him. The players like J.J. Watt and DeAndre Hopkins. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you've ever listened to me, I think that the team needs to be better around him. This offensive line that they have right now, I think is substandard.
Right.
You just look, and you can turn on the film and look at Donovan Smith and see how he struggles at times. I mean, he's a great athlete and he's a good dude. I mean, really good dude. Good in the community, but his numbers, he's never graded out in a season above 70%, and usually in the 60%. He's one of the lowest graded starting tackles in football. He's never had less than 40 pressures against in any season, and 49 or more in 3 of his seasons. I mean, those are atrocious numbers for a starting left tackle, and the Bucs rewarded him with a $27 million guaranteed contract, $41 million total. I mean, that's just, I don't get that. But they didn't have a choice. They didn't draft any other tackles to compete with them. They never have. So they were, and there weren't any on the open market, so they had to pay him. That's not good football. That's not good GMing at all, right, in my opinion. Ali Marpet was one of the best right guards that they in football 3 years ago. So what did they do? Moved him to center. Terrible idea. And now he's playing left guard. I'm not saying he's bad, but he's regressed, in my opinion, when you look at the tape. And Ryan Jensen, another good dude, but it was his first year starting in Baltimore when we went and got him and made him the highest paid center in football. Last year, I think PFF had him graded out at about 53%. That's dreadful. And he's one of the highest paid centers in football. We've got a lot of money sunk into an offensive line that was 31st in yards per carry last year and running the football. And I think Jameis was the 8th most pressured quarterback. None of those numbers are good. In fact, most of them are really, really bad. And Jason Light did 0 in the offseason to upgrade the offensive line. So, when people start ripping on Jameis Winston, I say, go look at the numbers and go look at the plays that he's made under pressure. And you want to point to the turnovers. This is a great stat. It's in his first 4 years, total touches. So that means passes, sacks, rushing attempts, total touches to turnovers. That ratio is among the best of the Hall of Fame quarterbacks. I mean, right on par with Breeze and Brady, better than Peyton Manning, better than Roethlisberger, better than Favre, better than Eli Manning, all of these. So, yeah, he's had turnovers, but he's also had to throw the ball more than any of those guys ever did. Never had a running game and has never had a good defense. Well, actually, he had one good defense, and they went 9-7 that year. So
he had one
Jameis
good defense for
perfect.
a half a season.
What's that? Yeah,
he had a good defense for a half a season
when they went on a run.
Yeah. JP, I want to go back to something you just kind of briefly mentioned as you were going into that, and I didn't want to stop you because I loved what you were talking about with Jameis, but you went back and you said Ali Marpet has regressed. Go into that a little bit more because I still tend to think Ali Marpet is at least should be in conversation for the Pro Bowl, but you're saying he's regressed at this point. Well,
I think, and that's a product of the coaching around him, and the players around him, and the fact that when he was a right guard that first year, you remember that first year, Ali Marpet was mauling people. He didn't even need to double team at some of the best defensive tackles in the league, and he was knocking them 3-4 yards off the ball. And you go turn on the tape from last year, and I don't know if it's because he's trying to help Ryan Jensen or Jensen's getting in his way or he's trying to help out Donovan Smith, but I just didn't see the same dominant offensive lineman. I still think he's very good, and he's the best lineman we have by far. But he hasn't been the dominant player that I saw in year one. I mean, when he was playing center, I think he was just out of his element. And I don't think he's gotten back to that mauler type moving people offensive lineman that I saw in his rookie year. And I think he can be, and I still think he's a really good player, the best lineman we have. But I think after his rookie year, I really thought that he would be a perennial All-Pro, and I think moving him around has really hurt him.
Yeah, I don't think there's a question about that. If they would have left him,
and the offensive line coaching has been dreadful to this point. Much better this year.
Is
you
it?
Can just see that.
Is it? Because we had that conversation during preseason, and I know a lot of fans kind of were going around that whole deal. Like, and you have to ask that question. No question, George Warhop, not a great offensive line coach, no matter how much they say that they loved him. We have Harold Goodwin now in as the run game coordinator, assistant head coach, offensive line, whatever. And then whoever his assistant is, I always forget his name. Is it better? Because so far, at least out of one preseason game, maybe not so much. At least not looking like it so far.
Well, I think that's more the presence of Donovan Smith and Ryan Jensen and Alex Kappa. I mean, DeMar Dotson, I don't think he played a whole lot in the preseason, but when DeMar's been healthy, he's been really good. I mean, among the best right tackles, but he's going to be 34 years old, and he's got a couple of bad knees. I mean, to think that he's going to be able to make it through a whole season, I think is a little foolish. You got to have a contingency plan, and they went out and got the guy from Pittsburgh. I'm not even sure what his name is, but at least they went and got somebody who's played in the NFL to back him up and back up the left tackle. But if Donovan gets hurt or DeMar Dotson gets hurt or Ryan Jensen gets hurt, who the hell's going to play? I mean, these guys have zero experience. I don't see how – I mean, we've drafted, 37 defensive backs in the last 3 years in the second and third round?
38.
I mean, where is the attention to the offensive line? I mean, this is how you win in pro football. And all the guys were healthy last year, and they still were among the worst offensive linemen as a whole in the game. So for the life of me, I don't know how you go out and draft that many defensive backs and just ignore the offensive line in the upper rounds. It baffles me. But hopefully they can stay healthy and the guys can coach around it.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you. Brent talked about Warhop, and then he talked about Goodwin, and then Joe Gilbert's here too. How confident are you that if you see something like we did in the first quarter of the Cleveland game? Because if you watch the film, the offensive line made some adjustments and did a little better going on to the second quarter. I mean, it was nothing to write home about, but you could see coaching was going on. How confident are you that if you say that the Cleveland game is where the Bucs offensive line, that's what they are, that's where they're starting, how confident are you by, say, like mid-season in this coaching staff, Bruce Arians and the guys, is coaching going to matter that much? Can they coach these guys up to, be competent?
Well, I've seen this in this league. Good coaches, good offensive coaches coach around offensive line injuries. And when you've got an experienced quarterback, you can do that. I saw it happen in Atlanta with Matt Ryan. But I don't know if Jameis is to that point yet. But I have complete confidence in Bruce Arians and that staff as a whole, that they'll do the best they can with what they have. But that being said, what they have is not great. And Donovan Smith has never been known as one of those, first in, first out kind of guys, or in the best physical shape. And is, $27 million guaranteed going to make him work harder and be better at that? For some guys it does. For some guys it doesn't. We'll see which way he goes. But if the Cleveland game is any example, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. That's the Achilles heel of this team. I mean, that's why I harp on it so much is if, had they, like Sean Murphy Bunting and Jamel Dean may become good players. They might become good players. But the fact that they felt like they had to draft more defensive backs after drafting Carlton Davis and after, drafting Vernon Hargraves and drafting MJ Stewart and drafting Justin, they felt they had to go draft more defensive backs. That's bad GMing again. To ignore the offensive line with these second and third round picks when you had a chance to address it and you didn't, is going to come back to haunt you. I guarantee that. And that will be a narrative throughout the season.
You talked about Achilles heel being the offensive line. Let's switch sides of the ball. And, the guy who has had a sort of Achilles and now hopefully he's back, Justin Evans back there. I sort of contend, I've talked about on the pod that, Justin Evans, now once he gets up to speed, that he's going to shine in this Todd Bowles defense, one, and mainly because Todd Bowles plays a lot of single high safeties, and Justin's our best sideline to sideline center field cover guy. Jordan Whitehead looks like he's a new player. Pretty much all the defensive backs, have looked like they're new players. They all kind of look like they know what they're doing. The communication is great. No one's lost. No one's palms are high in the air. How do you think about Justin Evans is going to do? I know it's early, but are you a Justin Evans fan, or are you okay rolling with, or would you rather, I guess, roll with Whitehead and Edwards, the kid out of Kentucky?
Well, I agree with you. From what I saw from Justin Evans in his rookie year and the times that he's played, he's shown incredible range as a safety. And like you said, as a single high safety, that's what you got to have. I mean, the guy's got legit 4.4 speed, and he can bring it. I mean, we've seen him be very, very physical. I think he would be great as a blitzer coming off the edge because of his speed and his size. I mean, he's a big kid. I actually was talking to him today in the locker room, and he's a big kid. He looks like a linebacker. I mean, he actually was next to Deon Buchanan. I think he's bigger than him. I mean, he's a big kid and he's fast. So yeah, I think he could be great in this defense, but he's got to be healthy. Is he going to be one of those guys that's going to be chronically hurt? I mean, it's been almost 9-10 months since he's been healthy, and for it to go on this long, I don't know if it's an Achilles or a turf toe. I thought it was a turf toe, but whatever it is, he needs to get out there and play. And I don't know if he's ready to do that just yet, but I do think, if you're going to take up a roster spot and you're going to be a high second round pick, the Bucs need guys like that to step up and become impact players. I mean, is he going to do it? Let's see. It's time for a lot of these guys to step up and be impact players that have been taken with high picks, and that's up to this coaching staff to make them accountable.
Yeah, we've been saying that since pretty much Arians got hired. We're going to find out real quick if it's been the coaching or the players. These Jason Life draft picks that have been, we'll wait and see. Then the next year comes, we'll wait and see. I really like what I'm seeing out of Hargraves and Davis. I think Davis is the sticky out of the bunch. He's going to lead the team in pass breakups. I think Hargraves, if the receiver plays between him and the sidelines, he's nails. He has trouble when the receiver, runs across or an inside dig. He kind of loses him there. I'm excited about our safety. I'm excited about our running backs, our linebackers. What do you think, since Bruce Arians has been here, what do you think has been fixed that him and Jason Light or his coaching staff? Like, what are you now that you thought maybe was a weakness going into the draft in the Bruce Arians era? Now that we're all through training camp and rolling the week one against San Francisco, what do you think has been fixed, or maybe is even a strength?
Well, I don't want to say anything's fixed until we see it in the regular season. But From what I've seen just in defense and in the preseason, I mean, the defense looks dramatically better. Honestly, I've talked about this for 2 years on my show, and I worked with Mike Smith when he was the head coach in Atlanta, and I think the world of him. He's an awesome guy, but his defense the last couple of years, and last year especially, was the most predictable, the most stale, non-adjusting pre-snaps. Line up in cover two, don't move for 15 seconds while the offense is audible. I've never seen anything like it in my life. And he didn't, the Chicago game where, I mean, this is a true story, guys. I don't know if you've heard me say tell this story, but the week we were playing at Chicago last year, on Wednesday in the Chicago Tribune was this humongous write-up about how terrible Mitch Trubisky was against the blitz and how good he was against four-man rushes so far in that season. I think, what did we play in game 5 or game 4 or 5 or something? Yeah, it was actually in the freaking Chicago paper, Chicago Tribune, how bad he was against the blitz. So what did Mike Smith do the first half against Chicago? He blitzed one time. And on the one time that he blitzed, Levante David got a great shot on Trubisky and forced an incompletion. And he ended up throwing, 4 touchdown passes in the first half? I mean, He looked like freaking Tom Brady. And the receivers he was throwing to were wide, flipping open. Like, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, it was in the paper how bad he was. How the hell is an NFL coach do you line up against the quarterback like that who's struggled against the blitz and not blitz him? I mean, that's crazy. He was one of the least blitzing defensive coordinators for the past few years. And you're not getting any pressure with 4. You have to manufacture pressure, right? You have to do something. You just can't sit back and just give up literally the highest quarterback rating in the history of the NFL. I mean, and you just do nothing. I mean, you could have blitzed 9 guys every play and done better than the worst ever, right? So never made any adjustments. When guys like Vernon Hargreaves are playing off and Carlton Davis are playing off when they're press man corners, I mean, it just made zero sense. And finally, even after that game, they didn't fire him, which was, and they had an off week to do it. So, I mean, I honestly, it defies any logic whatsoever. So, moving it forward to this year, Todd Bowles has transformed everything. You see every play in the preseason, every pass was contested. There was a defender right next to the receiver, if not in front of the receiver. There was pressure on the quarterback coming from all different angles, and that's just about 15% of the blitzes that Bowles is going to bring. I mean, I was talking to Bo Allen today about that. He's like, look, I said, you're not going to tell me the game plan, but I mean, we're going to see a much different pressure package coming at these quarterbacks. And he's like, oh yeah. I mean, it's going to be completely unrecognizable to Buccaneers fans, thankfully. So yeah, they're going to, these corners are finally getting to play the way they want to play, what they were drafted to play. There's going to be pressure coming from everywhere. The pre-snap reads for the quarterback is going to be uncomfortable. That's what Todd Bowles does. And I think this defense is going to take a complete, even without Jason Pierre-Paul, and even without, even starting a rookie linebacker inside at Devin White, who on the field I have not been really impressed with, but I mean, we think he's going to be really good. So, let's wait and see on him. But man, this defense is going to be so much better, and that alone is going to make this a better football team. Offensively, you've got great weapons, and Bruce Arians is holding them accountable. The accountability is palpable. You can feel it. You can see it in practice. You can hear the guys talk about it. The expectations of winning are there. It's not like we think we know how to win. It's like we're going to win. We expect to win. And I know every coach kind of tries to instill that, but this coaching staff, I think, has actually done it. So all those things being equal, still the schedule is really, really tough in the way it sets up. So it's going to be a more accountable football team. Will they get more wins? Yeah, I think at least they'll have at least 7 wins.
JP, I want to come back and ask you a little bit more about the accountability thing in just a minute, but I want to bounce back to the defense and what you're saying there. As far as I can tell, at least the part of the defense that has me the most concerned, and I'm very excited for this new defense from what we saw out of the preseason, should be night and day difference as you detailed out for us. But the weakest part to me right now, or at least the part that seems to have the most question marks to me, is the defensive line. From what you've seen, you've been around there. You mentioned speaking with Bo Allen and how he says that there's going to be something so much more different. Do you have concerns about the defensive line? Is that where you'd kind of, if you have a question mark about the defense, is that where you'd put it, or is it somewhere else?
Yeah, I mean, they've got what I would say is, one of the better defensive tackles in the past 10 years in Ndamukong Suh. I mean, that guy's legit. Mm-hmm. He's a game wrecker. And if he's motivated to play, he's going to be very, very productive. At this point in his career, is he motivated to play on a down-in, down-out basis? We shall see. Will they hold him accountable to doing so? Mm-hmm. From what I've seen so far, I think he's going to be really, really good. Vita Vea, if he can stay healthy, is one of the few guys I've seen be able to not only stand up to a double team, but split it and push. If they try to one-on-one block him, he's going to knock that guy 3-4 yards back into the backfield. He's that good. He's that big. But will he be able to stay healthy? That's the thing. If those two guys can stay healthy and be every down players, I think they're real good. I mean, William Dolston is, a little probably below average at what he does. He's never going to be a good pass rusher, but you just want him to be a space eater and do that. I think Bo Allen is he gets more out of what he's got than anybody on this team. The guy, he plays hard, he plays low, he's effective. I really like him, but he's not a superstar. He's going to be a good player, but not great. The other two guys I think can be great. beyond that, there's really not a whole lot. I like Nacho. I think Nacho can, if he plays 20 plays a game, he can give you some good minutes. But again, just a guy, not a game wrecker. But that's what Bowles is good at doing, taking guys, kind of like Belichick, taking guys that, are not on their own superstar players, but putting them in roles where they can be effective. So I think that's how that the defensive line has got to play. And I mean, if they get Jason Pierre-Paul back for the last, 5-6 games and, they're at 500, that can really help him. He's a legit player, but who knows how he's going to come back from that neck injury.
So you were talking about the accountability thing, and this is something that Bruce Arians has been preaching since the day he got here, and talking about his little accountability sheet that he has during practices and during preseason and things like that. But so much of this, I think, and this may sound frou-frou or whatever, but some of it can really just sort of be felt in sort of the vibe, in the atmosphere of the building. And I know Ren and I have often talked about going into training camp or preseason. You can just kind of feel it in the air. You mentioned the accountability is palpable. What are you feeling as you're around the building, you're around the players and stuff? And, can you point anything to more specifics? Because God forbid we get to week 15 and that's finally when somebody stands up to a Chris Baker and says, "Hey, why'd you jump that after we told you not to?" Like, God forbid that happens again.
Is that not such a Buccaneer thing that Gerald McCoy, may he rest in peace, he comes out after week 15,
happy day,
and Chris Baker jumps offside in a critical moment, and he's laughing about it in the locker room. And he says, "We're going to put our foot down. We're going to hold him accountable." In week 15,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is such a Buccaneer thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then after the season, we should have really, nipped that in the bud. We're going to hold guys more accountable from the beginning. I mean, you're 10 years into your NFL career.
Mm-hmm.
You're not, or 9 years, whatever it was, without playoffs. And this, now you're going to hold people. I mean, anyway, I just, then that was Gerald McCoy, right? That was
right,
the leader of your defense. 9 years in saying, we're not going to put up with this anymore. I don't know.
And then we had a whole other year of the same stuff.
Right. So anyway, and here's like I was asking guys, today to, can you verbalize what this, expecting to win idea is? Can you, what is the manifestation of a coaching staff that is holding you accountable? And, it is that accountability, as much as you just belittled it and you said his little accountability list. It is a real thing that if your name is on it more than once, more than twice, that there's a feeling that you're not going to be around here very long. And so from what I'm hearing is guys aren't on that accountability list very often. They're paying attention in practice. And I love what Bruce Arians said today in the press conference. Jenna Lane asked him, like, when you went around the league, what did you pick up any things, when you were a broadcaster last year, did you pick up any things that you're using? And he said, well, one thing I picked up that I know is I don't want to use, and that's having music at practice.
Right.
He said, all over the league, I was like, I don't get this. I mean, this is an intense time of learning in practice. We only get so much time with these players. It's music is nothing but a distraction. Why would you have it at practice? And I always kind of thought the same thing. I'm like, to me, the whole idea of that just says, okay, we're out here, it's more important that you guys are having a good time. I'm going to make sure you guys are happy and, we're not, taxing you too much as far as your focus and your detail. I mean, think about it. Like, who the hell can really concentrate and focus on what you're supposed to be learning on this in details, and just the message that it sends to the players that, hey, if you can't hear what I'm saying, it's okay, because I want to make sure that there's music going. I mean, think about that. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. For 2 hours, you're going to be on the practice field. You got to have music. Come on.
Yeah.
So to hear Arians say that's the most, this ridiculous thing is so refreshing to me. And and that to me is part of the accountability. I mean, it sends a message to the players. You are here to work. This is not a party. This is not having a good time. This is not, I hope you enjoy yourself with work today. It's the NFL. It's the NF freaking L. We're here to learn to beat the other team. And to me, like, when you're the Buccaneers and you have a losing culture, for a coach to even entertain that, like, win a few games, guys, and then maybe we'll give you some music. Go out and win some freaking games. Get over 500, and then maybe we'll bring you some music. Mm-hmm. But until then, no. Learn what you're supposed to learn. I love that about it.
Yeah, I got to tell you, and, this is something I kind of caught a little bit of flack for last year, but I don't care. I draw these connections all the time, and I'm weird like that. But, going into training camp and hearing practice has all this music, watching the Buccaneers warm up in Raymond James Stadium before the games, you would look at the teams that were more disciplined and the teams that were more together. Like you'd see them stretching on their side of the field, and then you look over and watch the Buccaneers and the way they were stretching. And even just something as simple as that, right? It just looked different. Like they looked like two completely separate teams in two different leagues. It was the difference between the Hawks and District 5. If anybody ever catches that reference. Like I totally agree with you. Right.
Totally agree with you.
Yeah. Hopefully we finally got our Gordon Bombay in to come and, get these guys together.
It's funny you say that because I always thought that about Cutter's practices. You watch them go through stretching and everybody's doing their own thing.
Yeah.
Like some guys aren't even stretching. It was like just, Deshaun Jackson's over there, just running around. Gerald McCoy's walking around. He's not. I'm like, do they do stretching some other time that they get, because right now they're not doing that. They're not stretching. Like hopefully they stretched in the or something. No, It's ridiculous. And you're right. Before the games, you see that the disciplined teams are doing everything. I always go back to this. I used to cover FSU basketball. And you'd watch teams come in and do their walkthrough the day before. As a broadcaster, you would be there, do some interviews, get some information from the other coach. And I'll never forget watching Duke and North Carolina come in, and even they come in practice, everybody's dressed the same. Florida State, God bless them, back in the Pat Kennedy days, and they had some great teams. Don't get me wrong. But guys would come in from class in their shorts or t-shirt or whatever. North Carolina would come in all wearing the same stuff. Mm-hmm. They'd go through their layup drills and their three-man weave. The ball would never hit the floor. It was the same repetition every time. Crisp passes, boom, 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 layup off. No one lays it straight in. It's off the backboard every single time. I mean, the attention to detail and fundamental from Dean Smith and Mike Krzyzewski was borderline lunatic fringe. And when you go and you watch Alabama football practice, it's the same way. The same exact way. And it's not by chance that these are the most successful programs in history. That's what sports is. It's discipline. It's monotonous repetition until you're blue in the face and you do it perfectly. Those are the teams that win. And when you've watched the Buccaneers practice over the years, whether it's Raheem, back in Schiano, it was toes on the line to over, but there was never any, I don't know, it was like so far over the line that it became comical, and the players never bought into it because he never had a track record. Right. But when it's Dean Krzyzewski, when it's Mike Krzyzewski, Dean Krzyzewski, well, it's when both those guys, when it's those guys saying it, you listen. When it's Bill Belichick, it takes a different credibility. The players buy in. Mm-hmm. But no, I mean, it sounds silly about stretching and things like that, but guess what? You're right on the money. Those are the teams that win.
Yeah, I'm with you. Back when what are we calling it now? The Thunderdome? No, what is it? Tropicana Field. That's what it's called now. When they would host NCAA basketball, sort of like the early rounds, I went down and watched practice, and it'd be like a half-hour practice, and Marquette would come out, and they would, use every second, and then the next team's waiting for them to sort of get off the court, and then Duke or Michigan State would come out, and they do their thing, and they leave, and they still have like 6 minutes left on the clock. Like, it was just like, it was clockwork. Yeah. It was precision, and you can just, like Brent said, you just look at one, you look at the other, and you're kind of like, you don't want to make a big deal about it, but then after the game, you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. It kind of is a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's not by happenstance that those programs win.
Yeah. My last one for me, I heard you ask this to the great Greg Auman, so I'm going to pass it on to you. Who's your surprise player for the Buccaneers? Someone who's going to, I guess, exceed expectations or be better than fans think, or become a fan favorite, breakout player, something along those lines.
Well, I said today on my show, and I'll stick with this one, I think Shaq Barrett can have double-digit sacks. And, I think in this defense, he's going to be put in that position. I I think he's a guy that just has shown some flashes of being a really good player, but never gotten the full opportunity and been fully healthy. I think he's a guy that in this defense can really shine. And especially if Ndamukong Suh and Vita Vea are on the field at the same time, and you got these fast linebackers and defensive backs coming from the slot, I think Barrett's a guy that can really, really have a big year. So that'll be my surprise guy. And I think Peyton Barbour might surprise a little bit. I actually drafted him in my fantasy because I think he's going to get some touches around the goal line. I think he'll if they can just give him a little bit of a crease, and the quick passing game can keep the defense honest. I think he can have. I mean, he's not going to have a huge year, but I think he can have a very effective year. I wouldn't put Ronald Jones in that category. I have no confidence in him.
Fair enough.
I appreciate you guys having me on. And once again, it's FanStreamSports.com. You go to the website, which actually we're going to update and actually launch the full website this week, and maybe even tomorrow afternoon for the show. We've been working on that. So we'll have a website up, which is daily blogs, and it'll be a home for a bunch of other stuff, the video that we get from One Buc. So we'll have FanStreamSports.com. You can also download the app, FanStream Sports, in Apple or Google. Download it, and as we say, hashtag tap that app, and you can listen to the live show and the podcast as well. So we appreciate everybody that's listening. Just download it, FanStreamSports.com, and listen up on Friday or every day live 3 to 6, and give us a call.
All right, Ren, well, that was JP Peterson of FanStream Sports. I think he was it 620 DAE before that? Mm-hmm. He's a guy who's been around the Tampa Bay market for a very, very long time, as you guys heard. That was a fun interview, Ren, and I'd kind of forgotten this from last year. With guys like this, you can just sort of go, hey, topic, and they talk for 20 minutes. You don't even have to, they'll just go. It's great.
Yeah, this is when you've sort of got to be on taking your notes game. Yeah. Because their answer is going to go for a long time, which mm-hmm. I'm not complaining. I'm with you. It's great. It's like, hey, Justin Evans, and right. Off he goes for like 7-8 minutes. But yeah,
I don't know if you saw, at some point during his first answer, I turned around behind me and grabbed a piece of paper.
Yeah.
so that I could oh wait, he said that.
I want to go back to that. I'm gonna talk about that later. But yeah, I mean, these are. I talked a little bit about last year. These are the guests that we can get now.
Mm-hmm.
We've been doing this long, for this long, I should say, and people respect our opinion, and people know us from going to training camp and stuff, and they're more than happy to do mm-hmm. it. So, the people that know, the people that are in the room when Bruce Arians having these press conferences, mm-hmm. these are the people we get, and it's
right.
I think it's I think it's great for the podcast. It gives another opinion,
right?
But someone who's on the same level as you and I, and and the diehard listeners.
Right. And and we can all obviously watch these press conferences and things that they show us online, and we can see what was actually said, right? Mm-hmm. But there is still something different about being physically in the room, or hanging around, catching things that maybe the camera doesn't catch.
Being in the locker room.
And being in the locker room and all those things. So, yeah, JP was really great. A couple of things I just wanted to circle back around that really kind of blew my mind. I've never heard anyone talk about the idea that Ali Marpet has regressed.
Yeah. Well, when you start, picking apart the Buccaneers and having complaints, uh-huh. You got to go really far down the list till you get to Ali Marpet.
Fair. That is fair.
So, I mean, I'm sure that has something a little to do with it. But, I thought maybe, a perennial all-pro was a little high mm-hmm. Praise. But, that's his opinion. It was something, I've talked about that once Ali gets there. And, of course, moving him from right guard to center, Ali's not a good center. I don't care how he blocks. Mm-hmm. He can't snap. He can't. Mm-hmm. He shot the ball back at Jameis's ankles and shins 20 times, 30 times.
No, I mean, was it that many?
Dude, he had problems.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, He had problems. It was like at least 4 times a game.
A game, because I was thinking it might have been like 4 times all season. You say it was 4 times a game?
Yeah, I mean, Jameis would come up with it, but when you're supposed to have it right at your belt or right at your numbers, and and it's hiking. Jameis is,
Oh, you're talking about like when he drops back in the shotgun and stuff like that.
When he's sitting there in shotgun and the ball comes like about ankle high.
Yeah,
like Jameis had to go down and bend and get it all the time. Yeah. And when as soon as that when that stopped. When Allie got hurt, we put in another center. That's when all that stopped.
Oh, and Allie got hurt playing center.
Whatever, it doesn't matter. But, I mean, I've always said that once Allie gets in, it's sort of like the offensive line is one of those positions is once you get in, you sort of stay there.
Right.
Like, it's not like it might be a one and done, but if you've been there 1-2 years, then you're just going to sort of be known because not a lot of people watch the offensive line or know other offensive linemen on other teams. It's how do they know them? They watch the Pro Bowl and they see, oh, look, there's Ali Marpet. And then you see him the second year. Oh, there's Ali Marpet. So now you just understand or think that that Ali Marpet's one of the best guards in the league because I've seen him in the Pro Bowl 2 years in a row. And now he gets to sort of get that longevity. But, making an all-pro team would, be huge for him. But I'm not really sure if he's there yet. But it's definitely fair to say that it's done his growth, go from right guard to center and then put him over to left guard. Yeah, it's absolutely fair. But I also think it's fair. I haven't delved too deep into to say that he's regressed, but I'm not going to sit there and say that's outlandish. Right. I would have more a tendency to agree with what JP said than not. But going from all-pro status to Pro Bowl status is that it's a regression, but you're still the best offensive lineman on the team and still one of the best in the league.
Right. And I mean to put that in perspective, they send 3 offensive guards. It's not just left or right. Like that's total 3 offensive guards to the Pro Bowl for each conference each year. So if Allie gets into that, he's going to be one of the top, let's say one of the top 6. Let's say 1 or 2 maybe don't make it due to injury or they're playing in the Super Bowl or something like that, right? So, is Allie one of the top, let's say 6 guards, left or right, in the league? Possibly.
I think he'll make it the first time the Bucs get double-digit wins.
Fair enough.
If not before.
Yeah, fair enough.
And because that's how you show up. You start getting in front of people's eyes. You're getting flexed, and when you get flexed, every announcer is going to talk about Ali Marpet. He's a really good young guard. You've never heard of him, blah, blah, blah. And you're going to hear that over and over because the Bucs are on TV more and more when they win. So as soon as, the Bucs, get 10 wins or more, like I really like Alex's chances to make a Pro Bowl.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you on that. And then, obviously he had tons to say about the offensive line, and I would say all of it well-deserved. But I always go back to this sticking point that I have when we talk about how bad the offensive line is. And I'm not going to say that we have a good offensive line. You're not going to hear me say that. I don't know where we are right now. I thought we had an okay offensive line throughout training camp. The first 2 games, they seemed to be okay for the one series that they were in. And then the third one, they looked horrible. Yeah. And then we didn't see them at all in the fourth one. So I don't know what we have in our offensive line this year. I really don't. We'll find out. But regardless of that, when you look at our offensive line from last year and even the year before that, the last couple of years, we have had one of the top offenses in the league.
Right.
And that's with a really bad offensive line.
And a really poor run game.
So, when you sit there and go, well, we didn't address the offensive line and we felt all this need to go and readdress the defense. Yeah, I get it, but look how the defense performed last year. Look how we had a great offense with a really bad offensive line and still had a good offense. We had the league's worst defense that lost us game after game after game. Which one's your higher priority?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just makes sense to me. Of course, I do expect them to address more offensive line stuff in years to come, and some of that's going to depend on how the draft falls for them. Because you can't just go, I'm taking an offensive whatever in the first round. Like, it depends on who's available. But, I mean, it depends on who's available and where they are, right?
Yeah.
And where you're picking.
Yeah.
Right?
It does.
So, I guess they could say I'm taking somebody, period. Come hell or high water, I'm taking a new tackle.
There's enough good offensive line every year where you could justify picking someone anywhere in the draft. Now, what you may not be able to justify is passing on someone like, a Josh Allen or a Devin White
Mm-hmm.
or some of these guys that were there where you also needed help. That'd be a little harder, but it's early, obviously, and we're already talking about next year's draft, but but I mean, I felt like I said this last year, like I would be shocked if like we don't get an offensive lineman in the first 2 days of the draft. And since we didn't, and we didn't look good against Cleveland, I'm sort of like back in the same spot, but then you don't know.
No, but Ren, here's the thing. You were shocked that we didn't get an offensive lineman in this year's draft. In the first two, I mean, everybody was shocked we didn't get an offensive lineman in this year's draft. So, except for maybe Bruce Arians and Jason Light.
But I also said that who was going to play corner for us. I did. Like I just had the days swapped. I thought, I was looking at nickel corners in day 3, and offensive defensive linemen in day 1 and day 2, and they just sort of flipped it. They went defensive linemen, and
well, it turns out who's playing corner for us are the 3 guys we had playing corner for us last year.
Yeah, it
turns out
coaching or players. We're gonna find out. So, there's not really that many holes left, in this. As far as starters go, we'd like some more depth, but the offensive line can use a couple pieces, and maybe the interior defensive line can use an upgrade. The starters are really good, and Golson, like JP said, he's fine. He's just what he is. He's there to eat up blocks and stuff to run. That's
right.
What he is. Maybe go get an elite pass rusher, or hey, JPP comes back and we have one, and we might not be so high on the priorities, but. With this new coaching staff, the safeties look good, the corners look good, the depth is there for both positions, the linebackers look good, the depth is there, and then I just talked about the defense. So what's really left? The quarterback's not going anywhere. The running backs, maybe, but who knows if Ronald Jones has a year that we hope he does. It might not be as big a priority as we think. Tight ends aren't going anywhere. The receivers are good. Like the only sort of spot you're like, you need to get better. At the beginning of the year, you go, you should be better at this position. It's really just offensive line.
Yeah.
So,
and when you consider that one of those offensive linemen could retire, possibly, or get retired,
yeah, exactly. Retire mid-season.
Right. You never really know what's going to happen. I only have one more thing that I pulled out to kind of bounce back, but I know we have mentioned this before and we've heard this, but I don't think we've ever really dived into this idea where he talking about where he was talking to Bo Allen earlier today, I think it was, as we record this, and he said this is going to be a different defense from even what we saw in the preseason. We heard Rondé Barber say he got a look at Todd Bowles' playbook, and they're only showing us 10% of what they're going to do in the season. I have so far really liked what I've seen out of the defense in preseason.
Yeah, how could you not?
I mean, it already, this 10% or this 15% looks, JP said it, it looks night and day difference from what we've experienced over the last couple of years. Even during that 5-game win streak with Mike Smith. Ooh, 5 games, great. Thank you. It was a pretty exciting 5 games, but still, like I'm left to kind of sit back and go, okay, well, what else is he going to do? Like, if this defense is he makes it sound like this is going to be an ultimately like shut down dominant defense. Nobody's going to score a point on us, but I know that's not true. You know what I mean? Like there's no way that's true, but it just, we saw what they did to us. Cause I mean, remember this 10% defense, Ren, like we damn near shut out these other offenses.
All right, here's what you're going to see from Todd Bowles. I've said this before pretty recently, people ask me, what about the Buccaneers? And I don't feel like getting a long conversation with them. I just go, you're going to really enjoy watching Todd Bowles' defense. Okay. Now this is what you're going to see. If a offense that we're playing gets a penalty, especially a 10-yard holding penalty, the drive's over. Because Todd Bowles is going to send enough guys where he's going to have to check, where the quarterback's going to have to check down to the back out of the backfield or the receiver in a hot route.
Right.
And they're going to come up and make the tackle. And they're going to do that twice in a row. And they're going to gain 10 yards. But guess what? It was 2nd and 20.
It's still not enough, right?
It's not enough. Yeah. And then if they get anywhere inside the 20-yard line, he's bringing everybody, and he's going to depend heavily on those young corners and safeties to hold their guys for 2 seconds. And that's what's going to happen. So you saw it in the Browns game. Like the Browns, they would, short fields, they get a first down or two, and then all of a sudden he'd release the hounds. Did it against Dallas. They got on their side of the field, got around the 30, 25. All of a sudden, all these guys start coming, and it's got to kick a field goal, or it got. I don't remember exactly how it went, but they didn't score. The only time they scored was on like a 3 missed tackle, fluky pass that, by the way, the quarterback guy had to get rid of because of pressure, and good on their guy. He made a bunch of guys miss, but it went for like 65 yards.
Right.
So it's I'll wrap it up again by saying, hey, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch this Todd Bowles defense. Fair
enough. All right, Ren. Well, that's really all that I had to dive back into as far as that. Did you have anything or?
No, I think that was a great interview. Someone we haven't had on before, doing something a little different, supplying more content for us Buc fans who can't get enough. And just expect these type of quote unquote experts or people on, same as sort of like we started last year. So I'm excited. Yeah. I think it was fun. It was a good interview. I'm glad that, he gave us the time to go a little longer than normal too.
Yeah. And typically, if you guys are just joining us for this season, typically the way this show works, this will be our mid-season show. It'll come out about this day, Wednesday morning, throughout the course of the season. This will be a show where we get to talk to somebody who is generally around the Buccaneers, around the building, and find out from them firsthand what is happening, since we are not there and neither you guys. So we're kind of all in this together. And then typically, Ren, we would also do sort of, we've had time to cool off from the game a little bit and think about it with a little bit more clear thought. Obviously, there is no game this week. Our last game was the 4th preseason game, and nobody cares about that game right now at all, including us. So we're not going to talk about it. Nobody wants to listen to it. So we'll forego that. But normally that would extend this conversation just a little bit. But we will have that. Now, coming up later this week, though, Ren, we will have our Buc in the News show. That'll come out very late Friday night or early Saturday morning for you guys. And that's where basically we're going to take all of the news from the week that we've had, and we're going to wrap that all up into one show. And, as we kind of get ready for the game, and we'll talk about the injury reports and different things like that as it may affect the game as well. So you guys be on the lookout for that in your feeds. Make sure you subscribe to us on Apple Podcast. We're on Stitcher, Overcast, Jabbercast, basically any podcasting platform out there. You're going to find us there, right there at the Pewtercast. Ren, why don't you tell the folks where they can get in touch with you over the course of this week if they want to talk to you about anything?
Best place to find me is on Twitter at Rendax, REN_DAXT. I'm always down to talk some Buccaneers football. But if
I was getting ready to go.
I saw the mouth open. But if you want to keep it a little private, or you want to throw out there in the Twitter sphere, feel free to slide in my DMs, and I can talk Buccaneers football with you there as well too.
And if you guys want to get in touch with me, you can find me at Brent Allen Live across all the social medias, and the show. You can find us at the Pewtercast on Twitter, at the Pewtercast on Facebook as well. And you can also email the show to thepewtercast@gmail.com. And Ren, I forgot, we actually have a show that's going to come out in between this one and the Buc in the News show. And that's going to be our fan interaction segment. We'll take a look at some of the iTunes reviews we've received over the summer, and we're going to read some emails that we've gotten from our fellow fans out there. Some good content there as well. So that'll also be coming out. Plenty of content coming to you guys over the course of the season now that we are back in full force. Vacation is definitely over at this point, as we've eased back into it over the course of training camp with Ren's Training Camp Diary. Of course, I use that in air quotes. So, guys, that's all coming to you this week. Tweet at us, email us, all that sort of stuff, and we'll talk to you guys in just a couple of days. Until then, guys, go Bucs.